Welcome back to the Robert Timmons Show, everyone. Today, our guest is Judy Wilkins Smith. She is a leadership and a motivational speaker and an organizational, individual, and family patterns expert, systematic coach, trainer, facilitator, thought partner, and founder of the System Dynamics for organizations and individuals. By using an interactive approach called dimensional mapping, Judy offers a deep, unbiased view of our professional or private lives. She moves organizations, teams, and individuals through highly focused explorations of their systems to reveal unconscious dynamics, themes, or patterns that interrupt or hinder access to success. Welcome to the show, Judy. How you doing?
Hi, Robert. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I think you said you're in Texas. I'm in Texas. It's a great day.
Yeehaw, as they say, right? Y'all ready for this? That's great. No, I appreciate you being here today. And I'm really, really excited to find out a little bit more about, all the things I just mentioned. Like it's incredible. The stuff I've read about you and what you're doing, Fortune 500 companies, high achievers. You're doing some incredible things. And just before the show, you were talking about how you've spoken around the world pretty much, and you were talking about Canada, Montreal, Ottawa. I'm really impressed and really looking forward to, finding out. But let's get into, telling our listeners, what do you mean by being big?
Okay, so first of all, it's systemic work. Just so systemic work and constellations, and I seldom will mention the two together because people go, "What is a constellation? Are you a Virgo, a Leo?" It's not that at all. It's the word that you use to describe components of a system. But let's talk about being big. So we're taught from very small to be humble, to be careful, to let others shine, to kind of step back. And we think it's an either or. Either we're big or they're in front and we're at the back. But it's not the truth. The truth is when we are all big and we all step into the highest version of ourselves, everybody wins.
That's
And
powerful.
everybody has a place.
While you were saying that, I was just thinking about how I'm raising my child. And that sometimes, I could be using those limiting things, not realizing it. But, yeah, I'll let you keep going. But I just want to kind of like, boom, something just popped in my mind when you were talking like that.
I
It's
love that you
impressive.
said that because here's the deal. That's exactly where it comes from. You tell your child and your child takes that on. And what we do is we hear these things and then we make them the truth, but they're not the truth. They're our truth. And we can change that anytime we want. And so the other thing that we know in this work is that you don't just inherit physical DNA, you also inherit emotional DNA. And the emotional DNA pops down in exactly what you've described. The thoughts, the feelings, the words, the actions that we see our parents do, that they saw their parents do, who saw their parents do the same. And now we wonder why we're sitting with this limiting thought, and it really bugs us. But a high percentage of the time, it's not actually your thought, your feeling, or your action. It began in the mouths and the bodies of your ancestors. And there's a lot of scientific studies that are done around about this, and some of it centers on epigenetic work, where we've discovered that events create significant impact on the physical DNA. They have an imprint on it. And the expression of that physical DNA can be controlled by the emotional DNA. So what we don't realize, to cap all of that, is we're pretty powerful at creating things. We just don't realize what we're doing. So when you're encouraging or discouraging someone, I always say, be careful. You think you're not a witch or a wizard. You're casting a spell right there, dude. Be careful of
Oh,
what
wow.
you're doing with that spell, because somebody's going to make it theirs. So when you're talking to somebody today, what kind of piece have you put into their mind that they can use to grow bigger? So growing big is super, super important. If you think about it, we're very hooked into where we're wrong, what hasn't happened for us, how stuck we are, where our limitations are, how we're limiting leaders. We don't shift it around and see where we're right. So we know that there are things that have got us stuck, but we don't go and operate in what we want. And systems are very elegant creatures. The stuck place All of your dislikes and your not wants probably belong to the past. They're the old system. But there is a place in you that knows very well it has a destiny, it wants to go there, it has something to offer. And that's the new pattern that's trying to emerge through you. And that's what we look at when we're doing this work.
Wow, that there's a lot of great stuff there. And so many different things came to mind, which I really love that about what you're saying because it's triggering great brainstorming thoughts in my head on different levels, from raising children to how we speak to others and into the leadership aspect where you're talking and you're helping someone with the words that you're saying. I think about a lot of programs and things that I've been in where a lot of the people are wondering, why can I not break through things? And they're realizing when they actually maybe tap into meditation or something, or get a coach, or some kind of thing to really sit back inside their mind, and they're finding out that it was a limiting belief that wasn't really from them. It was stemmed within generational
Totally.
aspects, right? So when they actually were able to remove it, forgive it, whatever it was, boom, they had like, astronomical changes happen in their life because now that belief has been removed and reframed and changed. Is that
That's
kind of
it.
what you're going at?
That's it. What you were talking about there is the neurological rewiring, right? So in this work that we do, somebody may come in with an issue, and by the way, it's not just what we tell others or what we've heard; it's also what we tell ourselves. So just hold on to the neurological part there. But let me tell you, I had a client who would always say to me, "I don't know if I'm going to be okay. I don't know if I'm going to be okay. Something's." And eventually, I said to her, where did that come from? That I will not be okay, or I don't think I'm going to be okay. And she said, "Oh, when I was told my father was terminal, I turned to the lady next to me and I said to her, I will not be okay. I felt it and I said it. And if you're feeling it and saying it in that moment, you're laying down a neurological pathway, you're activating a whole neural network. So, of course, every time something went wrong for her, it reinforced, I am not okay. And we had to sit down and say, so, what are all the things that you have done? Do you see how you are okay? Are you willing to let I am okay and I know how to do well be a new sentence for you, and really recraft it until she could internalize it and say, this is me, and make it different. So that's part of what we do. So getting back to the neurological piece, what we're doing is you come in, and because I work in 3D, this dimensionalizing piece, where I either use live representatives or I use inanimate objects, we set them out in a spatial relationship to each other, and then I begin to ask a series of systemic questions. And those questions allow people to have insights and to start reorienting that spatial representation. And I may say to them, go and stand in that place and just see what it feels like looking from there. So now they're shifting, they're moving. And what we know neurologically or neuroscientifically is that the more senses you incorporate, the more you get that embodied sense of what's happening. And the minute you get the embodied sense where the heart and the gut and the head align, you're in. Because now you've instantly start to lay down another neurological pathway. So when we talk about transformation, this is what's happening. We suddenly put off the resistance brakes. We go, yes, yes, yes. We tell ourselves a completely different truth. We say yes to the truth. The body says yes to the truth, and it's in. Now you've instantly laid it down. And this is what I talk about as well when you see people who have a traumatic incident. When it's really traumatic, the brain is wide open, it goes into survival, there's all of this download happening, right? Well, we now also know that you can do exactly the same because that's what's happening in what we call transformation. And so there's a lot of that happens during these events where people are transformed in the moment because they can see what event caused the language and the decisions and the actions. How did I make it my truth? Oh, how do I want this truth to be? And then we build it up still in the event with what is the sentence? What is the language? What is the action that needs to sit here now? and you can see, you will see that visceral shift. And I do that even with very logical and beautiful CFOs and CEOs who walk in and go, we're not doing that stuff, right? And I go, no. And we start walking around with papers, and I just ask them to do things, and we get to the end, they go, you did that stuff, didn't you? We kind of did.
I love that. I love that. Everything that you were talking about, it's pretty much it's almost like a vision board for an example, right? You,
Yes, it's a highly interactive vision board. You're literally
absolutely.
standing in the middle of your vision board, and I always say, if you ever wished you could actually see your issues, both good and bad, and step into them and explore them and start designing them, that's what this is.
I love that. I love how you just kind of created that, definition in that sense because vision boards are very powerful. A lot of people aren't using them as much. I think it's becoming more of a thought, an idea. A lot more people are talking about it. But you also talked about, how's that go? Neurons that fire together, wire together.
That's it. But just before you step off into that, can I just go back to your vision boards and give you one thing for your
Absolutely.
people? So I have two boards. I have vision boards and done boards. So with a vision board, it sits just above where I'm working. And every time something manifests, it gets a gold star. I never outgrew gold stars. And as soon as I have 4 or 5, I take those off and I put them on the other board because now that's my done board. So now I have a map of what is it that I'm going for? How am I doing? So it's a continuation.
So really, it's like a legacy board.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I do one of
Yes.
those as well because it kind
Yes.
of gives you that story of where you've been and where you are now. And then the
Exactly.
vision board is where you're going in your mind and your thoughts and your actions, which,
Right.
add to your goals, add to everything else, right? Your why. No, that's fabulous. I love that dumb board, analogy as well. And this is such a great discussion so far because there's so much powerful things you've talked about, right? You talk about talking to CEOs that are instantly saying, no, 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 I don't want any of that. Because they feel they're already there, probably. They feel they already, you got nothing to teach them. And a lot of people forget about being a kid and that imagination and that, visualization and that, focus of somewhere else, the vibrational levels and that information that you're putting yourself into as well. Those vision boards give you that different vibration that you're not there yet, but you're feeling it. And you talked about emotions. You talked about emotions as, that lady who created a saying with emotion and it changed her life. And instantly when you thought about that, I thought, well, like, and you mentioned it later, but you can do that opposite, right?
Absolutely. And that's the exciting piece is exactly that. You can keep flipping up, you can keep transforming up. And the way to do that is to actually go into it and feel it fully. And getting back to the CEOs and CFOs, I had one CFO said to me, I'm not doing that stuff. And I said to him, okay, so let me ask you a question. When you make all of these big financial decisions, where's it come from? My head. So I said, what about the heart? No heart. And the gut, no. So I said, okay, so when you make the decision, how do you know it's the right decision? And he said, well, I feel it. And I said, yeah, where? Well, here in my gut. And I said, so you actually do have the gut and you do have the heart. And just by the way, they're paying you a lot of money for the job that you do. And if you're not using the heart and the gut, you're costing your company 66%. That's pretty fraudulent. And he
Wow.
said, okay, we'll do it.
Wow, I love that. I never heard that before. I like how you took it into a percentage because if you're only using your mind,
Yep.
alone, there's 33%.
And good leaders, we know, are passionate. They're fired up. It's not coming just from here. It's coming from the heart as well. It's coming from the gut. The whole lot is hanging together. But it's got to be logically presented because we've been taught that as a leader, got to be stoic, got to use the brain, don't do that stuff. But if you look at the good visionary leaders, they all know to tap into it. They all know that they've got more than just their head. They've got all sorts of pieces they can use.
Wow. Well, I think all leaders should have vision, right? Or, if you don't have vision, how's someone going to follow you?
What you should have a vision doesn't mean they always do have a vision, but if you have a vision, You better be passionately in love with that vision, because if you're not, it's going to get old. You're going to find all the obstacles. Here's the other thing that I teach. The minute you've got purpose or vision, it will pull you past all of your old excuses and all of your limitations, because you're so engaged with it. It's actually the antidote to stuckness. So you want to have that vision and purpose. So we work a lot with, what is that purpose? That's a very small sounding purpose to me. Well, if we could do this, and when I say small sounding, I will push people to maximize their purpose, whatever it may be. It may sound small to someone else, it may be huge to them. But I want them to feel that stretch, because when they go all the way there, and you know this, there is nothing better than getting to what you've envisaged and being able to say, got the dream, got the dream. And when you've done it once, it's a habit. You will do it again and again, because now you're teaching yourself it's safe to step beyond those limits that the family patterns have created, or the organizational patterns have created. That's what we call the rules of the system, or the conscience. When you start to move beyond that, that's when the world grows. So
Oh,
you have to have
absolutely.
once.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I'm so happy we're getting into the visualization and everything and the emotional part, because it's such a powerful spot to me as an artist. I use that all the time. And you're right. It does create a habit, because you find the fun and the excitement and you keep creating new whys and purposes and goals. And you keep seeing the successes go and go and go as you keep moving on. And it becomes exciting. But what you do realize is you're surrounded by people that don't. Do you talk about anything in that regards where, people want that change, they get that change, but then they're surrounded by people that aren't changing with them?
Oh, yes, I do. Because I have tons of people who walk into my events and they go, well, this is all good, but my family's never going to go for this. Or this is great, but my CEO is going to think I'm a crazy person. And what I say to them is, it takes one. It literally does. One in the system will turn everything. Because the minute you start interacting differently, the system has no option but to begin reorienting. And so I have people who will go in and they say, my people are going to think I'm crazy. And I say, I want you to work with papers on Monday morning, take your biggest limitation that you're struggling with at work, and I want you to tell them this. Okay, guys, I'm a visual person. So I just need to map it out so I can see it. And then they put out the pieces of paper like I teach them. And it's sort of a from to piece. They'll put that out and they say, okay, so what are we missing here? And I guarantee you within 10 minutes, the whole team is playing, and I get the calls that go, man, this stuff works. We've just got to be taught to
Hmm.
get out of just the head and to start understanding that all of those senses are there for us. We are remarkable lives if only we know how to see them. And that goes for every aspect of your life. If you're hitting a real downslope, all that's happened is your box has got too small. Be grateful. You're about to get into a bigger box.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I always use the analogy of like going into an unknown cave, and the cave just gets bigger, and now you have a canvas that you can just create in, because you've
Exactly.
just stretched yourself. It's like going from coach to first class. You can't go back to coach now. You've been in first class. You know what it feels like. You know the room, the everything about it. You're like,
Yep.
oh no, I got to stay here.
Which is fantastic, because what you've then done for yourself, right, is you've created that inner shift which says, I belong here. And now you're going to make that your truth, which again goes to, you can make it your truth. It may not be the truth, it's your truth. And now you're going to build to make that so. So we're very capable of shifting ourselves up levels by being able to understand how to create those shifts and embody them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So let's get into your dimensional mapping. Can you tell us more about that and how that works?
Okay, so dimensional mapping. So this is the piece where if I have somebody who comes in with an issue, what I'll do is I will identify the components of the issue. So let's take a family, because a family is super easy to talk about. So so-and-so has an issue with their mother. I want to see what that looks like. I want to know where it came from. So I'll say to them, what are we struggling with here? Well, My mother doesn't see me. Okay. So I'll say to them, pick someone to represent your mom. We'll put mom up and I'll say to her, so what does that look like? Pick someone for you too. And she may place them so that she's facing mom, but mom's facing away from her. Well, I've had those ones happen a number of times. So what I'll say is, how was mom with her mom? Oh no, her mom was very distant. Can we put a representative in for that so you can see it? Sure. So we put that in. Now we've got her looking at mom, who's looking away at her mom, who's also looking away. I say, okay, so tell me about grandma. Oh, well, her mom was fine until grandfather was killed, great grandfather was killed. And then everything just went crazy. She had to put food on the table. So I say to her, okay, so we've got great grandma there now too. Great grandma couldn't look at the family, could she? She was so busy putting food on the table. She didn't have time for that. Yeah. So then, of course, a different insight begins to generate. Now, so I say, can you see each of you are looking for your mothers who are all busy looking for their mothers? You have a pattern. And we
Wow.
know that it started with great grandfather. And she'll go, wow, okay, I don't always look at my daughter. And I've wondered what that's about. Oh, and I struggle with my husband. Well, yeah, you do, because grandfather went missing. There's a history now of missing men. The women are all looking back to try and connect to their mothers. And so I will say to her, so do you understand there's a pattern? It's about you because you came here. It's not about you because it started there. It's all about you because you're the one who can change it. And so now what we start to look at is, for the first time in 4 generations, can a mother look at her daughter? Can she look back at the ones who couldn't see her and say, I get it? And now suddenly there's not such an anger and there's not an unhappiness. And she can look at her mother and say, I get it. I know where you were looking. It wasn't about me, but it's about to be about me because I can see you, mom, and give you a place. And now I can look at my daughter because I'm not stuck looking back that way like you were. So that's a family piece that may happen. And then, of course, what we'll also do is look at, so how do the men belong here? Do all the men disappear? Do the women struggle with relationships to men? Well, yeah, because we're too busy taking care of the family. So can we change that? What would that look like for you? What would you like to say to your husband? So a lot of this is what you hear or what you see is a lot of unfinished dialogue. We have these thoughts and feelings, but we're not sharing them with our kids and we're not sharing them with our parents. And so we lock ourselves into what that means and we make it mean my mother doesn't love me. She can't see me. Not the truth, but I've made it my truth.
Right,
And
right.
then,
That's
yeah,
like people create their own stories.
exactly. And make it the truth. What we make the truth is what our life becomes. So now with this lady, when she starts to re-language, having seen the pattern and actually gone and stood in each place to see what that feels like, you'll watch them start to move. You see the body jolt and they'll start to move and she'll say, I'm not carrying that anymore. I I feel different. I can see my mom. I can see my daughter. I don't feel trapped. And suddenly she's creating a completely different pattern. She's the one who will say things like, I'm doing it differently. My daughter and I are going to get close. Boom. Now we've just rewired. I'll say to her, how does that feel? She said, I've got goosebumps. I've got it. We're done. So it can be as quick as that. In sessions, it can take anywhere from literally 20 minutes to maybe a couple of hours. But we see person after person who comes who will lay down anything from a terrible event to a physical affliction to a situation with money, because that truth is no longer the truth for them. It's just being rewired. And so suddenly everything shifts. It's that positive shift that we're talking about that is as possible as the traumatic one was. But now,
That's incredible. When I grew up, you know, I you always heard about, you know, the Irish. or Ireland, the North South fighting all the
Right.
time. But I was into really deep music that had meaning to it, and a lot of the people sang about, be that change, be that one person, like you're talking about.
Absolutely.
You're talking about it in one mind, but when you have like a nation of minds thinking the same, you need that one person to kind of at least change it for their generational gap in a sense, right? And start educating in a different way. But there's like, as we talked about, that's, neurons that have wired together, and now you have to try and disconnect that and create and wire other ones. Um, I'm not sure exactly if that's how it works, but I,
Actually, it's not even that you disconnect them. It's that literally when, and this is the beauty of dimensionalizing, when they see it, suddenly there's room for a new truth to come in. And it's like, oh, and in an instant, you know that yourself. You'll walk into a room or see something incredible, and the thought that you've had for years goes bye-bye, and suddenly this one is there, and it's in your heart and it's in your brain. That's what happens. It's that rewiring in an instant, and we're very capable of doing that.
wow, that's awesome. And that blends us into, you're a pattern expert.
Right,
And, before I ask you to talk about something here, I always tell people that I'm reading books because I'm seeing patterns. And those patterns that I'm seeing in these books that I'm reading for personal development, for learning, whatever it is, from all these certain people, the people that I paint, majority, I implement those patterns because if they've worked, they may be worded differently in each book, but they're similar. And if they've worked for, say, 10 people that I've read, then
right.
why wouldn't it work for me? Why am I different?
Absolutely. You're not. You're not. And like I said to you at the beginning, we don't think we're magicians and wizards. We are in our own worlds, and it does work for you. There is nobody who cannot transform. There is nobody. We're taught we can't. We're taught it has to be hard work, and you've got to suffer your way to transformation. And I keep saying, yeah, okay. So we've got the suffering down really well. But could we be bilingual? Because there's a lot of space for transforming in a very happy, positive, grateful, purpose driven, visionary way. And that's what makes the soul hum. That's when people go, oh my goodness, I'm not this small being. I'm really big. I can do stuff. So, yeah, hence the big. It's a question I ask all my clients. How big are you willing to be? And they all go, isn't that a bit egotistical? And I go, no, the day that you agree to be the biggest version of yourself is the humblest day of your life. You are finally agreeing to be responsible for growing that which is you and being in service of the universe. Welcome.
Wow, I love everything you just said there. That's impressive. And it's so true, when you take control, like when someone says, when you say dream big or put big, sometimes we can only go as far as we feel or know, right? Even
Right.
then, we're scared of that. But in reality, tomorrow we're a different person that we can actually stretch even further. A month from now,
Absolutely.
we can stretch even further. The
Yeah.
more books we read, we can stretch even further. People think that when they set a goal for a year from now, they may get it in 2 months because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 60 days.
You do not. And with this, what you learn is to spot patterns and their origins and impacts, and then create patterns with destinies and legacies. And that's what we were born to do. We were never born to just be stuck in the old pattern. In fact, a high percentage of the time, you're not living your life. You're living the life of your ancestors. You're eating all the old pizza, and it doesn't always taste very good either. If you make a new pizza, it may have the couple of flavors that you haven't tried before, and it's pretty good.
It's so true. I think, as someone who learns and wants to go forward, like yourself, sometimes it's tough to talk to people that want to live in the past. They want to keep the memories alive, like that's their life. I've had friends that go, I wish no one changed. I love the way we were back when we were kids 20, 30 years ago. It's like, what have you done for 20, 30 years then? You just sat there and wished about that? Then
And
really,
they
you didn't
do.
live, you didn't grow.
But here's the magic in that, right? If somebody were to come to me and say, I didn't want anything to change, I loved the way it was 20 years ago. I'd go straight into dimensional mapping and I would say to them, I want you to tell me everything that you loved 20 years ago. And we would map it out and use representatives. And I'd say to them, now that you've got all that, what is the pattern that lives there? Okay, now how are you going to take that pattern and grow it to something incredible here? Because you can have that, but you can have it and add to it. So what is your chapter of that? So all that's happened is they know that there were things that they liked, but they haven't learned how to take that with them and create something remarkable. So they're halfway there.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think I just read something recently about that, where you go back to your past successes, your past great experiences, and then you bring them into the future and you relive them in a way, or reframe them, or whatever it is, to repeat them, because there's something that was in there that worked for you.
Yes, I would say, I don't know if you repeat it, it's possible, but it's very smart to go into your wins, because what it does is it sets off a whole chain of hormones. It's the opposite to the hormones of stress, right? So you're going back to all of the nice ones that juice you up. So if you can use those, then when you're moving ahead, if you feel that, you know you're on the right road. If you go back to feeling down, you know you've just gone back to a past that doesn't serve you. So if you're going to use it, which you should, be mindful about what you're using to drive you.
I think the one thing that we got to really, you know, push out here that you talked about, it's the feeling part.
Oh, feeling is huge.
Without the feeling, it's like a vegetable soup without the soup. The soup would be the feeling part. You need the soup in order to make the vegetable soup, for an example. I know it's a weird analogy. It just came to me, but I wanted to show the separation, that, the vision isn't good without the feeling. And the
Right,
feeling isn't that good without the vision. The vision, is it the past
exactly.
vision or is it the future vision? The feeling actually will dictate kind of where you are, really. Because like
Well,
you
it
said,
does.
I
And
feel doubt, then I could be thinking about something in the past.
you're hooked into a pattern in the past. But if you're going with a feeling that really makes you feel good and it bubbles you up, what's happening is, again, you're switching to different parts of the brain and you're activating different hormonal responses. So when you activate that hope, that wonder, that gratitude, that enthusiasm and joy, you're sitting in a higher set, or a more useful set, not a higher set, a more useful set of hormones and reactions that allow the creative brain to be available. And when the creative brain is available and the heart is open and the gut has switched from that clenched feeling to that intuitive feeling, it's game on. So you want to activate that pathway.
Oh, absolutely. And, oh, this is a great conversation, because I really love the word creativity, of course, being an artist. But when I realized that what I was creating on canvas, I was also doing in my life.
Oh,
And what I was creating, when I really found passion in my art and my canvas, it manifested into my life, because
it
I put so
must.
much emotion,
Right.
research, focus. All of a sudden, I'm traveling the world. I'm protecting animals. Now I'm like, I'm painting millionaires, and now I'm being mentored by millionaires. So
Right.
it's manifesting, and I just sit back and go, wow, it's beautiful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more that you dream and imagine is possible, the more you will head in that direction. But you've got to dream it and do it from a state of, my heart is open, my gut is intuitive, my creative brain is on. So that passion is very much a juice that drives it. It's very much the emotion, coupled to what it is that you want to do, that takes the purpose beyond that's a nice idea into, we're doing it, this is happening, and then you're off. So what I say to people is, often I'll sit and think about something I'd like, and I just imagine it very lazily, because I know if I imagine it too carefully, up are going to come the doubts, right? So I don't. I just imagine it and I feel what that might feel like, and I'll allow it to sort of percolate and grow and keep doing its thing, because then I haven't switched the warning system on. And when it's good and ready and I can feel it in my gut and my heart and my head, then it's game on. Then I want to look at, so what might stop me? How do we address that? Where did that come from? Who does it belong to? It's not mine. And I've got to make that goal big enough that it juices me. Because there was a gentleman, I've forgotten the guy's name, the one who wrote E-Myth, Michael Gerber. But he said, it's not that your vision is too big, it's that it's often too small. So it lacks the fuel to get you there. So whatever it is that you're wanting to achieve, you've got to be invested in it. You can't be half saying, well, that's a nice idea. This is it. It calls my heart. It's moving me in the direction. It's moving me out of the old system that no longer serves me, or the old patterns. This is the chapter that only I can write, and I know I'm supposed to do it. Here we go.
Oh, that's some great stuff coming out of this conversation here. But so as we move forward, what are three tips that you could provide our listeners today to help empower them? I know we've said a lot of things already, but is there three things that you could actually they could take and act on them right away?
You wanted to take it and start shifting things around for yourself. I want you to take a place where you're stuck. Write down your thoughts and feelings so you can see what you're telling yourself and what you're making your truth right now. And be very clear, it's you who's making it your truth, nobody else. So those three things, or three thoughts, feelings, actions. Then ask yourself, when you look at that, where did that first begin for me? Where did I first get stuck? When did I first have that experience of being shut down? Did it begin with me, or did it begin with someone in my family, or even my extended family? So are they really my thoughts or feelings, or do they belong to someone else and I'm holding on to them as though they were mine? So that would be number two. And then two things. Ask yourself what you don't want. First of all, you're going to be very good at that. Most people are. They can tell me everything they don't want. The chances are that belongs in your past or someone else's past. Now ask yourself what it is that you really want, and understand that that's yours. It is yours. It's where you were meant to go. It's the chapter that only you can write, and it's attached to your highest potential. And then stand between the two and feel what that may feel like.
Wow. That was great. Something I definitely can learn from too. I really love how you've opened up your thoughts to how it could be directing to the past of something that you have within you. Because I do find our body is a like a mind of its own. Like, you know, every cell is the same DNA in our body, right? And it's storing. It's a storing vessel that creates resistance through the emotional baggage that we put in here,
Of
right?
course. And that we've inherited very nicely and taken on. Yeah.
That's why I think guarding your mind is so important as you start learning to change your mind.
Guarding your mind is important, but even more than that is looking at your mind and really looking at those origins. I always say this work is ancestry.com 2.0, because ancestry.com is here's where you belong. It's brilliant. And people want to know where they belong. But this work shows you how that matters and what it's trying to tell you to move you forward. Because every step that you take is never just about you. You're actually changing and empowering the whole system.
Oh, that's awesome. That is just incredible. I want to thank you for being on the show today. I want to thank you for the information that you've shared for our listeners to empower them to move forward. You know, because I believe when a person changes and becomes, you know, empowered, it changes and ripples throughout their family, through their relationships, through their life, their business, whatever is happening. Because I do believe, like you've spoke a lot about in science and action and, you know, strategic patterns, that when, you know, you focus, you literally create the life you want.
Absolutely, you do. Where you are is a result of what you focused on. Where you can be is going to be your next result. So you want to be very careful about what you're focusing on.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Judy, for being here today. And I want everybody to remember, you know, follow Judy. Oh, actually, sorry, Judy, where can everybody find you?
Judy Wilkins-Smith. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook, my website, um, LinkedIn, just
Excellent.
about anywhere.
Excellent. I suggest you guys check her out, follow her, see what's going on. And, like she said today, there's so many great ways to change your life, change your patterns, create your own systems in a sense. There's a lot of great stuff out there. And remember to, subscribe to the Robert Timmons Show. Every week we do our best to have an amazing person like Judy on the show to share some empowering information that's out there, that's current. It's not necessarily current, but it's now being talked about a lot more, and a lot of amazing people like Judy. Thank you, Judy, for being on the show today.
Thank you, Robert. It was a pleasure, and it was lovely to be with you.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking around. If you'd like to see more podcast interviews, you can check them out right here. They're exactly what you need to hear next. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and become part of the community, and tell me what you think about the podcast interviews in the comments below. I read all of them every week. And join my Mind Power Mastery group by hitting the link in the description.